Right now in Module 10, we're going to talk about caregiver stress, stress management, causes, and strategies and techniques for managing stress. It's important to understand that people with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are usually cared for by family members or friends. And the majority, about 80% of people with Alzheimer's disease and dementia, are receiving care in their homes. Each year, more than 16 million Americans provide more than 17 billion hours of unpaid care for family and friends with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And in 2019, these caregivers provided an estimated 18.5 billion hours of care. Approximately 2/3 of dementia caregivers are women, and about 1 in 3 caregivers is age 65 or older. And approximately 1/4 of dementia caregivers are what we call sandwich generation caregivers. It means that they are not only caring for an aging parent, but also for children under the age of 18. So caregivers of people with Alzheimer's and dementia provide care for a longer duration than caregivers of people with other types of condition. And well over half of family caregivers of people with Alzheimer's or related dementias provide care for 4 years or more. More than 6 in 10 Alzheimer's caregivers expect to continue having care responsibilities for the next 5 years, compared with less than half of caregivers of people without dementia. So the demands of caregiving can limit a caregiver's ability to even take care of themselves. Family caregivers of people with Alzheimer's and related dementias are at greater risk for anxiety, depression, and poor quality of life than caregivers of people with other conditions. Now, I want to show a video, and it is quite long, and I thought about only showing portions of it. But this module is actually very important, and there is no better introduction than to understand a caregiver's perspective as much as we can without having gone through it ourselves. And that is why I want us to watch this. So let's start. The caregiver's perspective.
My mother was very meticulous. She colored her hair from age 16. She was a Marilyn Monroe blonde, very, very sweet lady. And she was a different person. She was haggard looking, her hair wasn't done, the house was dirty. I was like, whoa, what did I just walk into?
She came to visit me in New York, and we were walking down the street, and she went to the wrong doorway. And I mean, I'd lived there for 10 years at that point, and she definitely knew where my apartment was.
She would leave to go to work about 50 miles, and every day she would call and say, call me back in a few minutes. And what was happening, she was getting sleepy and would pull over and take a nap.
He would come into the room and say, where is my pencil? He's an accountant. I'm like, oh, it's in your office. And I was like, what are you talking about? 5 minutes later, where is my pencil?
In my mom's case, this person talked to her on the television, and she was able to talk to this person back on the TV. First time you'd think, oh, she's just joking, but she was sincere.
When you'd call her on the phone, she would be good for the first 5-10 minutes, and then all of a sudden the switch would hit and it would be the same conversation again.
We started fighting a little bit, and he would just say weird things or do weird things. His memory was fine. I went through the checklist of things online, and he passed with flying colors, actually. He remembered people's names, he wasn't losing his keys, he wasn't getting lost. It was really more of his personality was changing a little bit.
We have people who are struggling all over the place, and it's time to quit acting like this is a rare disease, that only the odd person gets upset and only a few family members are giving up their lives. Well, this is everywhere.
We sat down with the neuropsychologist, and he talked to us about what the testing was going to be. He did some initial testing with Arnie, and quite frankly, my stomach dropped to my feet and I wanted to throw up because some of the initial testing showed things that I had no idea that he couldn't do.
They asked her to draw a clock, and when she drew the clock, couldn't quite get the hands right. We had trusted her with everything, pay the bills, whatever we needed done, she had always done. And so now if you can't do something as simple as that, that means, we really got to help out.
It was a long, drawn-out, tiresome test, so yes. Because some of it I got a little upset because it was, I guess, confusing, a little hard for me to do. I felt like I should be able to do it, but I was just having difficulty doing it.
It was a couple of years before we got a diagnosis. And at first it was, some kind of Alzheimer's. And then as they continued to work with her, they said that she has frontal temporal dementia, FTD.
Dementia is sort of the umbrella term that means cognitive impairment. There are many, many, many different diseases that can cause dementia. Alzheimer's disease is the most common, making up about 65 to 70% of all the dementias.
One of the first steps I always tell people is to go to an elder law attorney, first off, to make sure your finances are in good shape. Join a support group. The information you get from a support group is invaluable. The more you know about this disease, the easier it is to cope with it.
When Ted started having symptoms, I read and studied everything I could get a hold of and learned it's a brain disease. And just like, an organ stops working, the brain stops working. That helped.
Currently, we have 72 degrees. Donald, as everybody knows, was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at age 39. Am I right?
39 is when he first started having symptoms. And it took 2 years, which is a normal time frame to get a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's. And so he was diagnosed at 41.
I don't think they want to hear your theme song, do they, Don?
Why not?
We'll just play a little bit of it.
I'm supposed to meet someone for lunch today, but I can't remember where.
At what point during this process in the beginning did you finally end up reaching out to the Alzheimer's Association or discovering it?
It doesn't have to be Alzheimer's. It's any type of dementia. One of our hopes is that doctors will immediately send you to the Alzheimer's Association. That does not happen. It didn't happen to us. In our situation, we were told to go home, get your affairs in order, that this was early onset, and it will go very quickly. And the first thing I had to do was educate myself. Meeting other caregivers and being part of a support group and going to the Alzheimer's Association's educational programs have truly saved my life, because without them, I would have been lost.
So alz.org. Oh, Donald, Christy, we love you guys very much.
Love you too, Neil.
So this is all you do all night is just walk, walk, walk?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember which one your room is?
Mm-mm.
Keep walking. Take a right. And we're back in your room.
Yeah.
Mom is just really interesting to watch because every day is a different day. And you look at her, some days she's just really up and on and ready to go, and other days, like today, she was very sedate. She's in her own world. Some days she's really far back in the world. Other days, she's maybe 10, 12 years ago. She definitely can't live on her own. But there are days that you think that she could be in just a true assisted living, but you know that she can't.
That's my Uncle Ed Tobin. And that's, what do you call that tall?
The water tower.
Water tower. Yeah, that's what Daddy worked.
Taking your parent to court to declare them incompetent is a pretty sobering thing to do. And, when the judge looks at you at the end of your hearing, at the very end, he goes, you fully understand that you were responsible for your mother for the rest of your life. And I can remember when the judge smacked his little gavel, everything just got dark, kind of coming up around you, and it's like, that's an anxiety attack, and you take a breath. You've got to take a breath.
That's Mom, looks like.
Yeah, that is.
That is Mom.
Everything that you're responsible for their clothing, their food, their health, their dental, their eyesight, everything, that is your responsibility. You have just added another person into your household.
I will one of these days.
Oh, you will?
Yeah.
What do you think you're going to tell me?
I don't know.
This ain't a good one. Well, the family didn't believe it at first. I still kind of think they're not 100% sure. Leela went from a person that was always happy, quiet, humble, nothing to say, into cussing. At first, it was funny because nobody was used to her cussing and she didn't know how to cuss. But you know, the hardest thing about it is that when other people are involved, they really remember the way you were. So they expect for you to still be able to do the same things. Other people think, oh, well, she's fine. She remembers better than me. So you get that a lot. I'd say, hey, just leave her alone. We bought a BMW over in Germany.
A Volvo over in Germany.
Yeah. Tell you, man, we did some fun stuff.
Nice one, beauty. Well, dealing with the diagnosis and looking forward, I think to stay somewhat positive, I have to look backwards of the things we have already done. Before this disease, we were able to travel a lot. We were planning on doing a lot of traveling when we retired.
How's your coffee? Wonderful.
Even though I want to travel, more travel has become difficult. We went to Florida not long ago, and we cut our vacation short because she just was out of her element. She wanted to come home. The average lifespan for somebody in our situation is 4 to 8 years. She was diagnosed 3 years ago. So I don't want to dwell on that. We know it's ahead, so let's just, like I said, live for the day. I don't want this disease to define who I am.
Hello.
All right, wait a second.
Okay.
Do I put this like this?
We try to make sure that we're exercising, walking the dogs, doing as much as we can. I mean, working in the yard together. That has been amazing. You know, planting the plants, watching the things grow, enjoying the time together.
It is peaceful and it's relaxing, though. It still takes a lot of sweat and work.
But he's good at it. He's really good. We didn't know this
Enjoy it.
before. Look at the skill set we've discovered.
I have left the oven on, I've left the stove on, so I have to be very fastidious about things, constantly checking behind myself. Some days are clear, and then I'll get disrailed where suddenly it's like everything's just jumbled up. It's extremely frustrating.
I am the partner. So my job is that every day, he's safe, we're safe, and every day should be the very best it can be. Now, doesn't mean that we don't have times we're sad. I mean, this is a diagnosis that's pretty stinky. But the bottom line is every day needs to be the best it can be.
I think we might end up with a
No, there you go. It's not making it to the ground.
His mornings are so much different than his afternoons. And so we work with that. We do the things in the morning, the stuff that needs to get done.
I took him out every day. I felt like he needed to see the outdoors, hear the birds, see the flowers, see the trees. He still was more comfortable. He was quieter.
The cardinal rule is never argue with a person with Alzheimer's disease because you're going to lose the argument. So you have to divert their attention. When my wife would say, I want to go home, she didn't necessarily want to go to a structure per se, but she wanted to go to a place of comfort where she didn't feel what was going on in her head. So I found that when she got anxious like that and I want to go home, to distract her, I would take her out and put her in the car, and we lived 1.5 miles from the ocean front. I'd ride up and down and she'd look at the lights and just think she was in seventh heaven. And we'd get back to the house and she would look up and say, "Oh, thank you, you brought me home." And that was a place we just left 15 minutes prior, but it was enough in her mind to calm her down and divert her attention.
Well, my grandfather, he was used to eating at 5 o'clock when he was younger. And as his dementia got worse, my mom would frequently not get home till 6. So at 5 o'clock, it would start. Where's supper? Why aren't we having supper? I need supper. Why the hell can't I get supper? This is ridiculous. And he'd get really adamant. So I learned to cook so that there'd be food on the table at 5 o'clock. I've got to figure out how to cook a couple things so he'll have it. And then I could give it to him when he wanted it, and then we didn't have a battle.
If you can focus on the things that the person is still able to do, you can suddenly realize all the opportunities that there are. So, for example, he remembers Brooklyn. He remembers that he grew up across the street from Ebbets Field.
Ebbets Field.
We decided to make a story about my dad's memories of Brooklyn because he was suddenly come to life. We sat together and I just typed it as he said it.
I was the middle child.
Most of the time when I'm with him, we'll actually sit and look at that book together. It's less about conversation now, where he is in the disease process. It's about listening to some music together or watching something. It's about painting. He was an artist as well.
Something like the colors here, right? That they're there. So I brought some things to finish, and I got another book, too, to look at. We were working on this one. When I was growing up, my dad and I did a lot of hands-on type projects. So now that he's here and still has the ability to do some art, I'm attempting to see what he can do. I've done a little bit of coloring with him and a little bit of watercolor, but I think there's probably more I could do, and I'd like to do it soon before he loses that ability altogether.
Branches off.
With something to focus on to do together like this, I'm not having to think of questions to ask him to engage conversation, and then him being frustrated not knowing how to answer me. So there's a connection we can make, even unspoken, just out of the intuitiveness that we have in the arts, I think.
Ain't nobody gonna blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Ain't nobody gonna blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine.
The other thing with the arts that's fun for all of us is that we're all musical. Our whole family has interest in music, guitars, piano, singing. So it's one way that we can all share something and have it be really meaningful and powerful and encouraging.
Yay us! The last time I tried doing a puzzle with her was right after her birthday in February, and it didn't go that well. She got really frustrated. She didn't do any of that today. It was more problem solving. That was very unusual, but we went with it. It was great, and we managed to finish the entire puzzle. That is rare.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is amazing. Yay! You did it! Do you like your picture? Mm-hmm. You know, my motto for this disease is have no expectations, because I had no idea what was going to happen today, but it was like the best day ever. You know, she used to repeat everything all the time, and she's definitely not doing that now. And, you know, she's barely talking, you know, most of the time. But today she said a lot, making the puzzle, and so that was unusual, you know, too. So you never really know, but Sunday she might have said 20 words, maybe. That's hard, watching the words dwindle. But yeah, when she said amazing today, that was amazing. I hadn't heard that word in, years. And I also loved watching her look at the pictures in her yearbook and still being able to recognize a couple of classmates. I think it's just one of those trade-offs. She recognized a few people, but she still doesn't recognize us. The other thing that was a little surprising today, her walk is much less confident. She's really doing that shuffle, which is hard to see. She was very uneasy, seemed to be trying to get from, you know, the kitchen to the bathroom and that kind of thing. So yeah, interesting.
Taking
a dementia person to the doctor's office can be one of the worst experiences any family member goes through, because they don't understand why you're in charge. This is not the doctor they remember. They're not hurting right now. You're making much too much of this, you know, and you're trying to move it forward, and they're just giving you all the reasons that you shouldn't be doing it.
When we were traveling back up north, he became very disoriented there. And at 4:30 in the morning, he got up. He wanted to get going. He needed to go to the other hotel that his friends from Boston were going to be taking him back to Boston. And I said, no, I'm taking you back to Boston. He goes, like hell you're taking me back to Boston. And so he goes into the shower, and I thought, how am I going to keep him here? I cannot get up right now and drive 300 miles. So I took the clothes and I hid them under the bed. So he came out looking for his clothes, and they weren't there. And I said, I just gave them to housekeeping. Housekeeping has your clothes. They're going to wash them, and we're going to get them back in an hour. And he said, Jesus Christ, I should slit your throat for that decision. And that was the first time that I got really scared. And I thought, oh my gosh, he doesn't even talk like that. And so you wonder, who is that person? And since that time, we've got him on different medications, and we have help with the anxiety and aggression. And so those moments don't really spin out like that anymore.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's things in the office today?
Office today is wonderful.
I mean, he'll get upset when I'm trying to tell him what to do in the shower because they feel like they don't need help. I've been doing this my whole life. Get the F out of here. But I don't get the F out of here. I stay there and I continue to do what has to be done, and it all gets done. He thanks me. So it's just different every day. You just don't know. You don't know. Okay, so the video that I did of my husband spinning out of control was taken right before I was going up north for our last summer in New Hampshire with all the family. And I wanted them to know really what could happen, because I knew that they would be spending time alone with him, and you never know when it's going to happen.
You don't belong here, okay? This just belongs to the top person of this company right here.
Okay.
This is locked. You don't belong here.
Okay.
You don't belong here.
All right.
All the stuff in here has nothing to do with you.
Okay.
Where you belong in here is either with me down there or in here. This is probably better for you in here. You can be in here, okay?
You want me to sleep in here?
It's either here or with me down there. I'll be better here for you.
Okay.
Pick this one, okay?
All right, I'll take this room.
They had no idea that that was part of Alzheimer's, because they show you on TV, the person leaves their keys in the freezer. I mean, please, that is nothing compared to the stuff we have to manage, the unpredictable nature that comes in, and then it goes.
You don't go in here.
I do.
You do not.
But the way I loved the way the video shows is it shows him the day after, being that sweet man that he is.
You look good. Hey, you gonna go get your coffee?
Yes.
So I'm back in my room.
The reason I'm wanting to show this video is that I want to show the disease. It's not a reflection on who my husband is, it's just that disease, because he would never act like that.
There's this judgment we put on caregivers and family members about whether they do or whether they don't, and how they do it, how they treat and how they talk. And everybody's so scared about this thing, and they're so silent about it, that I think it all goes underground. And so there's a lot more ugly stuff going on. People are doing the best they can because they're afraid to ask questions because they'll get judged. We've got to start being aware that every time there's a person living with dementia, we actually have two people who are really struggling.
One night, he woke up and grabbed my hand and pulled my hand back so hard, and he said, somebody is after us, we're being chased, they're going to hurt us. And he was frantic, but he bent my hand back so far, I thought he was going to break my hand. I turned the lights on, I talked to him, I calmed him down. I was scared, I didn't know what to do. See, that's where you've got to understand it's a brain disease, and the brain is deteriorating. It's lucky if it can remember how to put a spoon to your mouth. It's very hard on the caregiver because you've got to be on top of it 36 hours a day. Yes, you lose sleep. Sometimes he'd take a nap and I'd pray it'd be a 15-minute nap so I could get a shower.
You're the best daughter.
Thanks, Mama. So I think that maybe that's what I wish I knew about being a caregiver. There is no break. And so that's where that idea that, you know, my emotional resources are limited. You know, whereas I'm so patient with my mom, but it's like that's where my patience ends. Because I have to tell her to do something 10 times. You know, she really can't do much by herself anymore at all. I think it's important to constantly be grieving because otherwise you're just in denial. It works, but it's exhausting, you know? And that's what I tell my therapist, like every day you have to actively work on it.
You're the best daughter.
Thanks, Mama. And adopting a dog was a big part of that too. You know, that was gonna force me to spend time outside. People are like, you've got all this and now you're gonna get a dog and you don't have any money? And I'm like, yeah, it's a dumb decision. But in a lot of ways, it's a really good decision. Not that my dog is gonna help me with all these problems, but to just love you unconditionally, right? And to always be there is a silly thing, but it matters.
You'll have to put yourself first. And that's important because you can't be a caregiver if you're ill yourself. And most of the time you fall ill because you're not getting enough sleep, you're not getting enough exercise, you're not eating well, you're so worried about them. But if you don't take care of yourself, sometimes the caregiver dies before the loved one.
I actually felt like I was his caregiver, making sure you were eating, making sure, you know, he was, and it didn't always work, and sometimes it would end up being a fight, but trying to make sure he was doing what he needed to do too.
Oh, it helped me immensely. I don't think I could have done it anywhere near the quality of what I did without her. Because she pushed me in times that I needed pushing, and in some cases not enough. But because she wasn't totally in it, she was able to see things from a different way and got me to do things that I probably wouldn't have done if I was doing it myself. You know, that helped immensely.
Right. How much longer do you plan to make sure she eats at least one meal a day?
Right.
You know.
We go through rough times. I used to come home sometimes and go in my bedroom and sit in the closet and just cry because I was watching my mom disappear. And then I'd pull my bootstraps on and say, I gotta do this. So those are the kind of things that you have to work through. It's not that simple. And there's no formula that I could give anybody that says, do it this way. It's what works for you in your heart, as long as you don't lose yourself.
We just forgot our anniversary, quite frankly. So, I mean, this is kind of how it impacts husband and wife. You know, you just don't have time to do the things you need to do, but we try, we still are trying. I think overall, our energy level is also affected, so we're just tired. I did pretty well for the first 3.5 years, but I had a bad car accident, partly because I was so fatigued and distracted. I was on my way to pick her up and I rear-ended a car. And I was lucky that I walked out of it. That can kind of tell you that you're just not 100%.
We all have negative thoughts about what we're going through, and the sooner we can stop feeling those terrible thoughts, the better we can start restoring our energy. So we just have to find ways to find our center. So meditation is very powerful. Acupuncture, craniosacral therapy, aromatherapy is fabulous. It will help clear some of the negativity and the drain.
More than likely, it tends to be that the caregivers get sick quicker and end up dying before the person that they're caring for dies. That's something that the Alzheimer's Association will tell you over and over and over again. But it's hard to listen to that because you feel selfish and you feel like, oh, I'm worried about how I'm feeling versus how my loved one is feeling. Last year, Don was showing signs of progression, and I was helping care for my father who recently passed away from cancer. And I didn't really pay attention to my health like I should have, and I got very, very sick. I ended up in a hospital for 45 days. I had no one in place to take care of Dawn, and we had to act quickly. Luckily, my son came home, and he really had to fill in for me because I did not have that plan set up. I never thought that would happen. And so it makes you realize that you have to think of every possible risk of something happening and you not being there as the main caregiver.
His last month at home, he sat on our couch and listened to me make phone call after phone call after phone call, begging for help for him. He had gotten violent on a trip to Connecticut, and I couldn't leave him alone. I couldn't leave him alone with the kids anymore. I didn't know when he would have another episode, but he just sat and listened over and over and over again to me beg. And I regret that probably more than anything, because it took a lot of pride from him to know he was that kind of burden on his family. And it was hurtful to know that I was so desperate to get him out of the house. Fortunately, our community surrounded us. That saved our family, because honestly, I really don't know what I would have done if I would have had to keep him at home. It's almost Bradley's birthday. Bradley's gonna be 12. Yes. Oh my gosh, it's right. Yeah, he's gonna be 12 years old. Frankie's 15. She's taking driver's ed now. And she's playing softball. She's playing for the school. And Bradley's trying out for the school basketball team for middle school. So they're really busy. They're doing lots of stuff. Just like you always have been. When he was laying in bed and he was non-responsive and he was dying, it was really, really hard to see him like that. So I go from picturing him, the epitome of health and love, to seeing him sick and then dead. And so I try to force myself not to do that, but then it hurts because it's very hard to recognize that somebody so healthy could now be gone completely.
Sarah was in bed maybe 4 days before she died. That was all. She was standing prior to that. And she was laying in bed, essentially just going through the dying process. She had stopped eating, stopped drinking, and the organs were shutting down. She actually verbalized and said, you know, I'm dying. I actually watched the process with my wife until she took the last breath, and she literally just forgot how to breathe and died. When the death came, I thought, I've had plenty of time to prepare for this, and it was a total different type of grieving. Once the death actually occurred, it was a very difficult period of time for me, personally. I had a diagnostic brain autopsy done at the University of Virginia, and there was no doubt the brain was full of plaques and tangles, completely full. So the diagnosis of probable Alzheimer's at that point became, it was Alzheimer's disease, definitely, no doubt.
I never got to say goodbye. By the time I really knew my mom had this disease, there wasn't any opportunity to have a real conversation. That's why they call it the long goodbye. So when she died, as I held her and took that last breath, the floodgates of tears came, because I really learned something. That even though she couldn't communicate with me the way we communicate with people, she was still alive. She was still my mom. It is the 6th leading cause of death. That's pretty big numbers. No cure, 5 million people living with this disease. So speaking about it and not being afraid to say the word loud and clear, we'll find a cure. I'm very hopeful we'll find a cure.
His mother passed away from younger onset, and his brother passed away from younger onset. It was really important to him to be part of a solution because he carried around a lot of guilt, thinking that he may have passed this horrible disease on to his children. And he's pushing me forward to always advocate to help find a cure, because that was really important to him, and it was on his bucket list.
Hey, Miss Rick, how you doing, dear? Good to see you. So proud of you and how you're fighting.
People are talking about it. People are rallying around it to try to find a earlier diagnosis, better treatment. There's nobody out there that hasn't had it touch them or their family. And I think everybody's becoming more aware of it. And when you become aware of something, then you start to act on it.
It's affecting everyone in every class level, in every age level, in every gender, all demographics across the board. It's not just grandma's disease anymore. It's everyone's.
This disease will either shut you down or it gives you a catalyst to do things. You want to do something. You want to fix things to make life as normal as possible. The person whose life is just in a total shambles has a day or two of normalcy. That's the greatest gift you can give them, is to know that they're cared for.
I think to let him know that he's loved, that he's not a burden, that we pull together. I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but that's really important to us, I think.
She's a pleasure to be with. I want to check in on her for myself, and I also want to say hi for her.
I do it because I am her caregiver. It is definitely part of, my identity.
It's not about whether they'll remember. It's I'll remember. And for me, it completes me.
We always depended on her. And that's just the truth. So now, we got to do this. It's the only right thing to do. You can't just bail out. And that's the way we feel. We've got to do this.
There's aspects of who she is, the kind of woman she was, that people can still connect with. My caregivers love her. She can be so funny. She'll go up to a kid and she'll cuddle their little feet and she'll say, "Hello, Sugarfoot." She's still there.
Spend as much time with the person as you can. It might be really hard to see them like that. In the long run, you'll end up regretting if you don't.
Cherish all your moments that you have with them and make sure you remember them.
Oh, you caught it! Look, it's snowing.
What we've learned is that no one has the answers for us. It's an ever-changing story because tomorrow, Dawn will be different. And I know that, and that's okay. That holding of a hand and that just reassurance that you're there for them, they can feel that love. And they don't need your words 100% of the time. All they need to know is that you're there for them, that you're not going to leave them, and that they're loved.
So there are certain behaviors and factors that create the greatest caregiver burden. With estimates of the prevalence of dementia doubling every 20 years, the burden of care on the family of dementia sufferers is a growing crisis. Worldwide, and even in the US, the large majority of people with dementia, again, are cared for by family members rather than institutions such as nursing homes. So we want to focus primarily on influences on caregiver stress. Caregiver burden has a number of elements, including financial impact, social isolation, the sandwich generation issues. So in other words, like as mentioned before, caring for children and parents simultaneously, and the stress health impact. The Alzheimer's disease facts and figures an annual report released by the Alzheimer's Association, revealed that 60% of dementia caregivers report high or very high stress levels, with an estimated 40% experiencing clinical depression. In addition to direct caregiving, a significant number of family members report economic impact, including employment changes, so changing from full-time to part-time, quitting a job, taking a leave of absence, or even turning down a promotion. Disruptive behaviors are the greatest caregiver burden. That means when you're dealing with aggression, agitation, this loss of inhibition, delusions, hallucinations, these mood disturbances, those types of behaviors create the greatest caregiver burden. It means it's a lot more difficult to take care of somebody in Alzheimer's who has these behaviors. There was a review of the evidence done in 2017. Review of the evidence means that they've looked at different types of studies and the studies that are out there about caregiver burden. It revealed that 60% of caregivers have depression or anxiety disorders, with strong indication that these conditions emerged in the course of caregiving instead of being pre-existing conditions. What that means is they didn't have depression or anxiety before they were a caregiver, but that it happened during the course of caregiving. Stress-related cardiovascular risk is also identified as a consequence of chronic stress of caregiving. So again, that means that they are at higher risk for heart attack or stroke or another cardiovascular event because of this chronic stress. The most compelling conclusions from this review was the impact of dementia patients' neuropsychiatric symptoms on the caregiver's well-being. So again, we are talking about these disruptive behaviors creating the greatest caregiver burden. These behaviors also negatively affect the emotional connection between the impaired individual and the family member, as well as interfering with the caregiver's attempts to assist them with activities of daily living. So dementias with early stage disruptive behaviors, of course, introduce particular challenges. Now, what are 10 symptoms of caregiver stress? How can you tell that somebody is stressed? Well, there's a denial about the disease and its effect on the person who has been diagnosed. I know mom is going to get better. Or anger at the person with Alzheimer's, frustration that he or he can't do the things they were able to do. You know, he knows how to get dressed. He's just being stubborn. Social withdrawal from friends and activities that used to make them feel good. Like, I don't really care about visiting with friends or neighbors anymore. Anxiety about the future and facing another day. So what happens when he or she needs more care than I can provide? Depression that breaks somebody's spirit and affects their ability to cope. I don't care anymore. Exhaustion makes it nearly impossible to complete daily tasks. They're just too tired. Sleeplessness caused by never-ending list of concerns. What if she wanders out of the house or falls and hurts herself? Irritability that leads to moodiness and triggers negative responses and actions. Leave me alone. Lack of concentration that makes it difficult to perform familiar tasks. Like, I was so busy, I forgot my appointment. And health problems that begin to take a mental and physical toll. I can't remember the last time I felt good. So if somebody experiences any of these signs of stress on a regular basis, then it's time to seek help. There can be many causes of caregiver stress. Emotional demands resulting from the care receiver's condition. An extreme degree of physical and emotional care is needed. There's just no way that you can make him or her well. Conflicting demands. The care receiver has needs. Spouses have needs. Children have needs. Employers and coworkers have needs. You have needs. Trying to meet the needs of everyone creates conflict and stress. Ambiguity of roles. Sometimes caregivers do not know exactly what their roles and responsibilities are in relation to others around them. The workload, of course, there's just too much to do sometimes. lack of support, and conflicting policies and procedures. These can prevent professional caregivers from doing what they believe is appropriate, and family caregivers from receiving services that they want and need. And now I want to talk directly to caregivers, because there are many ways to manage stress. The very first thing is knowing what community resources are available. There are adult daycare programs, in-home assistance, visiting nurses, and meal delivery. And those are just some of the services that can help you manage daily tasks. The Alzheimer's Association, which is where I'm getting a lot of my material from, has an online community resource finder, and the Alzheimer's Navigator is an online tool that helps evaluate needs, identify action steps, and connect with local programs and services. If you experience signs of stress on a regular basis, you need to get help, because ignoring symptoms can cause your physical and mental health to decline. You also need to ask for and get help and find support. The Alzheimer's Association, again, has an online care team calendar that helps caregivers organize friends and family who want to provide care and support. They also have a 24/7 helpline, and you'll see that number listed on the slide. Use relaxation techniques. There are several simple relaxation techniques that can help relieve stress. You just need to try different ones and find which works best for you. And again, you can find all that information on the internet. Physical activity in any form can help reduce stress and improve overall well-being. Even 10 minutes of exercise a day can help. Take a walk, do an activity you love, such as gardening or dancing. And find time for yourself. Consider taking advantage of respite care so that you can spend time doing something you enjoy. Respite care provides caregivers with a temporary rest from caregiving, while the person with Alzheimer's disease continues to receive care in a safe environment. So learn more about what options you have for respite care. Become an educated caregiver. As the disease progresses, new caregiving skills may be necessary. And again, the Alzheimer's Association offers so many programs to help you better understand and cope with the behaviors and personality changes that often accompany Alzheimer's. You may find it helpful to talk to other care partners and caregivers about how they are coping with the challenges of the disease, and of course, the uncertainty about the future. Take care of yourself. Visit your doctor regularly, try to eat well, exercise, and get plenty of rest. Making sure that you are healthy can help you be a better caregiver. Make legal and financial plans. Putting legal and financial plans in place after an Alzheimer's diagnosis is important so that the person with the disease can participate. Having future plans in place can provide comfort for the entire family. Many documents can be prepared without the help of an attorney. However, if you are unsure about how to complete legal documents or make financial plans, you may want to seek assistance from an attorney specializing in elder law or a financial advisor who is familiar with elder or long-term care planning, or both, and learn more about planning ahead. Let's watch this final video on caregiver tips dealing with caregiver stress.
My mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's a couple of years ago, and it feels like things are going downhill. I get anxious not knowing how or when her disease will progress. And I don't know how to handle the way she's behaving right now. How do I keep my own stress under control and still be the best caregiver for my mom?
Caring for a person who has dementia can be very stressful. But your well-being is just as important as your mom's. You've already got a busy life, and now a new full-time job has fallen on your shoulders. Your mom has always been your caregiver, but now the roles are reversed. She's dependent on you, and the pressure to keep her healthy and safe is overwhelming. As her disease progresses, you will be faced with challenging moments and difficult decisions. To avoid burnout, it helps to get organized and put some systems into place. Practicing self-care is important both for your sake and for your mom's. It may be helpful to find a support group that can give you valuable tools and help you find strength in connecting with others facing similar challenges. Educate yourself on the resources in your community that can be of help and reach out to them so you're prepared when you need them. Financial planners, elder law attorneys, social workers, and support groups will lighten your load. Learning a new way to communicate with your mom will help you both as her judgment and reasoning skills diminish. If you notice she's easily overwhelmed with choices, don't offer them. Keep conversations calm and simple to avoid conflict that will agitate your mom and increase your stress. If credit cards are becoming misplaced or bills aren't being paid on time, talk to her about taking over these responsibilities. It's important to be ready to make tough decisions on her behalf, even if she's resistant or doesn't agree there's a problem. You may need to step in and take control of the situation. Remember, you're helping her now that her judgment is slipping. And although that may feel hard, you're doing it for the right reasons. Get support. Enlist your mom's friends to visit her regularly and take her on outings. If it's in your budget, hire someone to drive your mom to activities or on errands. At the end of the day, take comfort knowing you are doing the best you can to take care of your loved one. And don't be afraid to ask for help. For more caregiver assistance, please visit us at alzheimersla.org or call us at 844-HELP-ALZ. That's 844-435-7259.